Ladies and gentlemen, please look up there. We are doing scope management in predictive projects. We are still in planning phase, okay? We are in the process of define a scope. We have passed the first two processes, which were plan scope management and collect requirements. We're now defining scope. And we are in mini lesson, and we want to create our document, our first output of this process, because we have tried hard. We have put lots of efforts to do this process. Now, what's the result of doing this process? The result or output is creating a document called scope statement. It's a, let's say, 1 page or 5 pages or 10 pages, depending on how complex and big our project is. It's several pages document. Now, this document is called scope statement. Scope statement is your official promise, okay? Official promise of what you will deliver to your client, to your sponsor, okay? It's a high level document. This is very important, guys. It's a high, there is no lots of details in a scope statement. Like, okay, when do we do this task, or what tasks are involved in our project? No, it's just high level. Okay, it's a high-level document that explains what the project will deliver, what's included and what's not included. Now, we said it's a document, okay, several page document. This document has several different sections. For example, scope description section, project deliverables section, acceptance criteria section, project exclusion section, constraints, assumptions, different sections, okay? Now, for example, what's scope description section? For our hospital project example, in a scope description, it may mention that build a 250-bed hospital with ICU, diagnostic labs, and supporting facilities to improve care and reduce wait times. It's just high level. In one line, we describe what's the purpose of this, what's the highest deliverable. The next section is project deliverables. In our scope statement of hospital project, we may say in that section that a hospital facility with pharmacy, imaging labs, ICU, surgical unit, 500 space parking, digital record system, and staff training. These are high-level deliverables. Okay, so pharmacy department, imaging labs, ICU department, ER department, 500 parking lots, digital record system, staff training. These are high-level deliverables. Okay, and remember, these deliverables are aligned with our bigger goal. What was our bigger goal? 250-bed hospital with ICU, diagnostic labs, and supporting facilities to improve patient care. These high-level deliverables align with them. Okay, so high-level deliverables are mentioned in scope statement. You may say, okay, high-level deliverables also mentioned in project charter. Remember, we said in project charter, high-level information, high-level stakeholders, risk are mentioned. Yes, it is mentioned. But remember, guys, charter is created way before than a scope statement. Okay, we had less information and data when creating charter. But right now, in a scope statement, we collected our requirements. We have our requirement list. Now, our high-level deliverables are more precise than project charter. Project charter includes a higher level of deliverables, okay? Just broad terms, broad deliverables. But right now, we have the better view of, okay, what product, what service, what result we as a project team will deliver to our sponsors, our Ministry of Health. Third section of the scope statement is acceptance criteria. What's acceptance criteria? These are the conditions that our deliverables should meet, so we could say, okay, it's done. It meets our expectations. By our expectations, I mean our client's expectations, okay? Verified, good to go. So, our deliverables, those final product, those services, those results that we deliver need to meet some expectations, some conditions. These are called acceptance criteria. For example, for our hospital project, hospital need to pass inspection, or ICU units need to meet CSA Z739396 policy code, for example, or parkings should has 500 spaces. We need to go and count down the number of parking spaces we have, or 95% of staff need to be certified, and plans, all of our plans, those project management plans, subsidiary plans, those 20 documents need to be signed by a sponsor. These are acceptance criteria. And guys, remember, different deliverables have different acceptance criteria. Okay, ICU units acceptance criteria is different from parking lots acceptance criteria. The next section of scope statement could be project exclusions. What are not included in our project? For example, for our hospital project, swimming pool is not included, or staff visitor housing is not included, daycare facility is not included. So if at the end of the project, a sponsor or Ministry of Health comes to you and say, hey, where is the daycare facilities, or where is the housing for nurses, for example, you should show him or her the exclusion section of the scope statement and say, hey, just shut up. No, don't say shut up. Say, see, these are this exclusions list. And you, as a Ministry of Health, you signed this, you approved it, and then we start working on that project. Okay? That's why scope statement is very important. It's a promised list. And remember, guys, when our scope statement is ready, which we're doing right now, this process, define a scope, okay? We're defining a scope and we're creating a scope statement. Then a lock goes onto the scope statement document. Any change, any single change to this scope statement document needs to go through integrated change control process. Go through lots of processes, lots of steps to add something to this statement. Because adding anything, okay, means extra cost, extra time, extra resources, new risks. Dominoes effect. Every piece of project will be affected by adding anything. That's why we protect our scope statement. We protect our scope and we avoid scope creep. Scope creep, remember? Adding unauthorized work to our scope. Great. The next section of scope statement is constraints. It means project, for example, must finish in 3 years within 300 million CAD budget and comply with all health codes. These are just our limitations, our constraints that we need to follow. And assumptions, skilled labor and equipment available, funding release as planned, and training resources ready before opening. So when we are defining these scopes, we have some assumptions. We define a scope and we prepare our scope statement based on these assumptions. If one of these assumptions become false, this will affect the deliverable, okay? If, for example, instead of 300 million budget, we get 100 million budget, it will affect the number of deliverables we will deliver, okay? We won't deliver 500 parking spaces. We will deliver only 200 because we have lower budget. So assumptions are really important. Great. This is about the scope statement, guys. So why do we need a scope statement? Because without a scope statement, scope creep happens, as we talked about it. Stakeholders keep adding just one more thing. Please just add this one more thing. No, we won't add this one more thing. Okay, we have agreed on it. Scope statement. Remember, you approved it. You signed it. If you want to add one more thing, you need to go through integrated change control process. We need to evaluate that change and see how it affects different parts of our project, and then decide to accept or reject or delay it. Okay? Don't say one more thing. Sorry. And remember, guys, when you are creating scope statement document with your team, and obviously those high-level decision makers, like a sponsor and Ministry of Health in our example, you are applying two very important principles. Stewardship. What was a stewardship? It means you're a guardian of the project. You need to protect your money, project's money and time and resources, okay? You need to include scopes, deliverables that add value to our project. No nonsense deliverable will be added, like soccer field for our hospital. This is nonsense deliverable. It doesn't add value to our patients, to our hospital project, okay? So you're doing stewardship and you are focusing on value. You only add deliverables. You only add works that adds value to our project. Awesome. It was a very good mini lesson. Let's see what type of question you may get from scope statement on your final PMP exam. Now, my favorite part, mini question. You are a PM nearing the end of planning. Consider that. It's end of planning. We're not in executing phase. Your team has already completed the requirements document, but senior management is still debating whether certain stakeholder requests belong to the project or not. Different departments interpret the project goal differently. So alignment is needed here, okay? We need to throw a workshop and align everybody. Why everybody interpret differently? Okay, let's get back to the question. Before you can move to creating the WBS, so before you can move to creating the WBS, you need a document that formally defines what the project will deliver, what will not be delivered, exclusions, and the conditions for formal acceptance criteria. What should you develop next? A, requirements traceability metrics. B, scope statement. C, change management plan. And D, scope baseline. Okay. You can think for 0.5 seconds. Done. Your time is up. And it's either B or D, guys, okay? Because both of them has the term scope. No, this is not the way we solve questions. Of course, it's B, scope statement. Question asked for definition of a scope statement, because a scope statement is a document that includes those high-level deliverables, exclusions, acceptance criteria, assumptions, constraints, okay? And question is asking for that document. And remember, it says we need it says before going to creating WBS, okay? Create WBS is our next process, okay? So we are in define scope now. We haven't created our WBS, and scope baseline, which is option D, is created in that process, in create WBS process, not in this process, not before create WBS process. Okay, that's why D is incorrect. And remember, guys, scope baseline, which you will learn soon, scope baseline includes scope statement plus 2 other documents. Okay, but the question specifically asks before creating our WBS. So scope, we create scope statement before creating WBS. Requirements traceability matrix, RTM. When did we create that document? Look up there. The second red rectangle, collect requirement process. We created RTM and requirement list or requirement document in collect requirement process. And option C, change management plan. Change management plan is a document that tells us how to handle different changes. It has nothing to do here with the question. So I think we covered why B is correct and why others are incorrect. Great. Now I think you still have some remaining questions, concerns about define a scope process. No worries. Why? Because we've got mini FAQs. Mini FAQ is waiting for you.